them, the Bluetooth ones. I think they're Anandas. They're not inexpensive.
Wait a second, hold on. That sounds like is that a double negative? They're not. And so that means they cost a lot of money. Did I do that right?
Well, it's relative to what you believe costs a lot of money.
Holy crap! $1,300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how soothing though is your voice going to sound? It's going to be velvety.
Oh my gosh! No, it's would I pay $1,300 for this cord to go away? That's the question I have to ask myself.
Well, you get a pretty significant upgrade in sound quality too.
I'm sure it's more than just that. Look,
I'm waiting for Alex to do his own YouTube headphone review channel. I don't know what you're waiting on.
I've smashed that subscribe button. I would do it.
Wow.
I don't think I want my wife to know how much I've spent on headphones in my life.
I don't know. I get the sense that it doesn't just.
I don't want to know.
Audio equipment, right? Like, if you're that fanatical about headphones, what else is going on? What else are you guys into? I've heard you guys talk about watches quite a bit.
Yep.
It never stops.
Let's stop this conversation now.
No, I want to talk more about headphones because I noticed you're not wearing any. So
no, I don't go on the Refresh Friday show. But yeah,
you should. I do. I got the. I just use the cheap in-ear, but I find that it keeps everyone's voice level, so I'm less likely to talk over someone, or I can hear. It just seems for a better experience if you wear the headphones. Just a FYI.
Well,
yeah, I totally agree.
Jason, I just got I made friends with the owner of Noble Audio.
Oh, okay.
And he made me a custom pair of his Prestige line. So I do woodworking on the side as well, and he wanted to build a set of in-ear monitors purely out of wood and a little bit of glue.
Oh wow!
And so normally what they do is they use screws and they use hardware, and he wanted to just do a real, back to the, pureness of the tree basically, and they don't suck. I'll just leave it at that.
They don't suck. Back in the good old days in the 1400s when we would put wood in our ears to listen to music. Okay, yeah.
Well, it gives a different resonance to the sound.
No, what was that?
Woo, surprise.
Scare you.
I literally jumped out of my chair.
See, that's the other benefit of wearing headphones during these shows.
Yeah, it's true.
The sound effects are awesome.
Blow your eardrums. We need to come up with something a little bit lighter.
Oh, you don't like the creaky door?
That's.
Is that a throwback to the old AOL days to let people know you're in the room?
Oh, that's what we need to do.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Alex has entered the chat.
Yes, ASL.
Yeah. What was that little sound that went along with it? Was it just a? Yeah.
Well, there was the MSN one too. So you had AOL, you had MSNs.
Yeah, that's more of an ICQ guy. But
make some friends on MySpace.
The old technology.
The jet engine start.
Yes, that's right, Jake. So that's how you know we're here. The dealer refresh.
Kudos to you.
You're welcome, Jason. So today we're joined by Brian Miller and Jason Notstrom. Although every time we have Jason on,
it's twice.
I do it every time. That is totally some dyslexic thing I've got with your last name.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Alex, I've got a drawer full of conference badges, all that say Jason Strum. And for my nearly 48 years of life, it's been Strum and not Strum every time. I even mess it up myself sometimes. So I have like this. I'm going to teach this to you so you'll remember. I messed up myself sometimes. So I got like this mnemonic device I use to remember my last name. So I just asked myself, why can't Jason be a pirate? Because there's no R in Stum. That's how you remember.
Oh,
It's
wow.
Stum, not Strum.
So I think it goes without saying. I assume you're a dad with that kind of.
Yes. That is fourth level dad jokes because I have 4 kids. So, yes, fourth level dad joke right there.
All right. Well, Jason's no stranger to Refresh Friday. Last time you were on with Jessica and Darren, that was a fun show.
It was.
That was a while ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But this is Brian's first time.
Hey, Brian.
First time caller, long time listener.
Where's your sweater, man?
They need to come out of hiding for we're headed into the season, right?
Yeah, my favorite fact about Brian is he sells ugly sweaters.
I mean, they practically sell themselves
For a long time.
Did I ever hear you said something about 15 years?
Yeah. The site went live. We're coming up on 15 years when the site went live. So you can thank us.
Ugly Christmas sweaters. Wow.
Yeah.
That's almost as old as Dealer Refresh.
Maybe
Same
there's a
amount of time.
partnership here, just
Yeah.
now that we can all drive legally. Yeah,
We can do it.
So
Well, both of you guys are. I mean, I'm sure most people know Jason. You're with Dealer Inspire, and Brian. What's your position over there?
So I'm with Cars.com. I'm the director of our national advertising team. So my team, we work with all of the OEMs directly, their media agencies. We also do a bit with the CPO teams and tier 2 teams. So certainly we've got a field team that'll call on the local dealers, major accounts teams that call on the larger groups, and then the OEM team that calls directly with the manufacturers. So yeah, been with Cars I've actually been with Cars longer than I've been in the Christmas sweater game. So 16 years with Cars. So
what did you start
That's
doing
great.
at Cars?
So I started in the field. As many people know, we've got territories and we service and consult dealers in certain territories. So I started in Indianapolis, pretty much fresh out of college, and called on. We had about 120 dealers in the Indianapolis market that I would call on, and loved it immediately. Loved going into dealerships, meeting these business owners that were local but thought really big, had a big influence on the economy. And this was timing wise, right? This is like 2005, right as everyone was really getting on board with what digital could do for their dealerships. So it was a great time to join the Cars family, and I've grown in my career since then. But started in the field and even spent a couple of years over on product, and enjoyed taking my learnings from meeting with our dealer customers and bringing that to our product side to say, this is what our customers want. This is how consumers engage with them. How do we build better products? That's how, Jake Whitler's been on a bunch of times. Jake and I started working together on that team and really enjoyed it. And then I started working with our OEMs about 8 years ago. So I work with a variety of OEMs. And in my current role, I oversee all of our partnerships and our teams that call on both the Detroit-based OEMs as well as East Coast-based. So I have a counterpart, Mark Williamson, that manages our West Coast team.
Nice.
Got a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, it's a great place to be. People talk about culture all the time. The culture at Cars is top notch. So it's been a fun ride.
So who gets Texas?
There's a lot of people in Texas, as you can imagine, right? But yeah, we've got a variety of territories, and then certainly we've got several major accounts that are based in Texas. We even have a couple of OEMs now in Texas. So
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was you with the East Coast OEMs or your counterpart on the West Coast who got Texas.
Yeah, it's West Coast. It sort of go based on where they started. So yeah, it's
makes sense.
Our Toyota team is part of our West Coast team.
Makes sense. Well, guys, should we jump right in?
I thought we were.
Well,
Yeah.
jump into the topic of the day.
Oh yeah,
That that loyalty thing.
the loyalty.
Is there no loyalty in automotive?
Well, I think that's one of the things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. Well, give us a little background on what we're thinking of when it comes to loyalty, so we can set the stage and the tone for where we're going today.
Yeah, so this is something that came out of a recent report from IHS Market, which just kind of came across my newsfeed one day, dove into it, and found it really interesting, and just got me kind of starting to think a little bit differently about the way dealers can market to drive loyalty. So this report from IHS Market took a look at loyalty rates from the OEM level, the brand level, and then finally the dealer level. I'm going to try not to punch my microphone in the face because I talk with my hands a lot. But at the OEM level, as far as loyalty rate goes, they're tracking about a 60% loyalty rate, which, by all accounts is okay, right? So you're keeping 60% of your customers in-house. They're doing a good job with their marketing, their messaging to keep people in love with their brands within that OEM umbrella. When you get down to the brand level, it's right about 54%. So, you're kind of batting 500 of getting people to stay in the same car, as they move from purchase to purchase. And both the OEM loyalty rate and the brand loyalty rate have been trending essentially upwards for the past decade or so. But when we get to the dealer loyalty rate, this is the number that really jumped out to me. And that dealer loyalty rate is coming in at 36%. Now, that's slightly higher than it was a decade ago when it was at 32%, but it's also down from the past couple of years as well. So you have this.
Do we have a
upward trend
screen share on that?
I don't.
I'm sorry. Okay.
But
I didn't.
anybody who wants to see it, just Google and throw it in the old Google machine, IHS Market Loyalty Report, and you'll find it, or Automotive Loyalty Report. So you got the OEM and the brand on the uptick. The dealer loyalty rate is down at 36%. But kind of like when you dig around in the numbers a little bit, what really kind of made me open my eyes a little bit was like when you compare, which you'll see right there on the screen, when you compare rural and urban dealers, those loyalty rates are almost identical. They're within just a few tenths of a percentage point of each other, which you would think might be the opposite, right? When you're in a highly congested urban area where there's a lot more choice, maybe loyalty is lower. And then when you're in a rural area when there's only like one Chevy dealership within 50 miles, then maybe that loyalty rate's a little higher, but they're really close to each other. And then when you look at that like lease loyalty rate as well, it's like, oh, we got to be winning on leases at least, right? But even with leases, they're finding that only about 44% of lease customers return to that same dealer again. So, achieving like this high loyalty rate at the dealer level, it's tricky for a lot of reasons, but that's not to say there isn't anything that you can do to keep more of your own customers.
Sounds like
Yeah, I would have
leasing
thought
would be a good one.
I thought the lease would have definitely been higher. So that's less than 50%.
Yeah.
44 and a half. Where are dealerships failing to have such a low number in lease loyalty?
Well, I don't know if I would call it failing. It's just not necessarily being cognizant of what their lease retention rate is. I know, I'm in Detroit. So when it comes to leasing specifically, when I was in the dealership, it's a little bit different. We're a flipped market, in Detroit. We're like 80% lease, 20% finance, which is crazy. Mm-hmm. So the dealerships I worked at, we always had an eye on lease retention, and we tried to keep that like over 60%. But a lot of times it's just a factor of not knowing. But then there's this other tricky part of loyalty that I think can put you in like a false sense of security, and that's your CSI scores, right? Because as a dealer, mm-hmm. you can look at your CSI and, Jeff, you guys all know this, that you get graded on your CSI by the OEM. As managers, you're going to grade your salespeople on their individual CSI scores. And you can look at that and be like, we're crushing it, man. We're top of the region. We're top of the district. We're doing great, and think everything's okay. But you can have like really good CSI and also not very good loyalty because they're actually two different things. Customer satisfaction is the way I like to describe it. It's a feeling. CSI measures a moment in time, or like a group of moments in time in dealing with your dealership. And loyalty is an activity. It's something that happens over time, repeated experiences. It's your marketing, it's your messaging, it's the way you communicate combined with those transactional experiences, all together make up that sentiment of loyalty. So you can have good CSI, not necessarily great loyalty just because you have good CSI.
Well, you can't bribe them with a free tank of gas when they're just thinking about buying a car again.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's the answer to customer loyalty. Just send them, come on in every month and get your free gas. Right, that will keep them coming back every single time.
Well, the used car king did that with car washes, and
he did a pretty good back in the day, at least with service loyalty, when I was selling Volkswagens, I think that was one of the biggest reasons why they had implemented free service up to, I think it was like originally 30,000 miles.
Yep.
And from everything that I had read at that point, after, post, I guess, that whole trial run, it did a really great job for Volkswagen back then. So I never really understood why they got rid of that. Did you guys, are you familiar with that, with the Volkswagen program?
Yeah,
I'm sure some other
Volkswagen
manufacturers have probably jumped on it since then.
Yeah, and I think Brian from the OEM level can speak to that, just in terms of like that loyalty funnel, if you will, Brian, in terms of what happens at the OEM level, right?
Well, Brian, real quick before you jump in, you mind answering this quick question from Drew Ament in defining loyalty a little bit more? Is it just sales loyalty, or is it any dollar loyalty after?
It's the whole experience, the sales and service experience, Drew. It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
In that report, what we're talking about is everything. What the report was talking about is just sales loyalty, for the clarity you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it goes into just what is the brand offering from a product lineup. And to me, that's a really interesting area to look at is within the segment. Are you seeing you're not seeing as much transition from segment to segment. So within truck, you see a lot of truck owners stay as truck owners. It's just a matter of, are they going to stay with the same brand? And clearly that's a huge area of focus for our OEM clients is how do we maintain either our position, or what we see are these strong challengers that are coming up. Think about what Ram has been able to accomplish just in a short amount of time with their offering. And I can speak to this personally as a truck owner. A very small consideration set, but suddenly, you're seeing other vehicles on the road. It's like, wow, I wish I had that technology. And so a lot of times, I think that's where you're seeing the shifts are just how is the OEM, how are they listening to the consumer and understanding their needs? 10 years ago, they may not have considered that somebody in the suburb who isn't working in construction would want a truck. Now that's one of the biggest, fastest growing areas of truck sales is suburban households that are just really looking to have an alternative to the minivan. They want all the space and cargo and capability, but now they want it in a truck. They want to ride higher. So you're seeing brands offering more capability, but also just expanding the product suite. And we've seen that a lot, both in price point. You've seen, certainly, Jeff, you've seen at your store, the variance of maybe we used to only offer something that was considered ultra luxury, just north of $65,000, $70,000 within certain brands. Now they're coming all the way down. They're touching into the $30,000 price point. So there's a variety of tactics that they're trying to do, either offering the portfolio or expanding the price point to bring people in. And we also see CPO as an area where you get a customer into the brand through CPO, perhaps a lower price point, but that's getting them into the dealership. That's getting them used to what the consumer experience is like to own a vehicle. And so OEMs are certainly always trying a variety of tactics. The free car washes or the gas, usually that's at a tier 3 level. But what is the warranty offering? And then what else are we offering as you expand your needs? How are we changing our product portfolio to make sure that we've got the minivan or that we've got the truck or the full-size SUV with third row, constantly innovating to make sure they're meeting consumers' needs? And that's what we've been having a lot of our conversations with our OEM clients right now. It's like next year, 63 new vehicles are coming out. So how are you, that's a lot of choice for consumers. So how are you going to stand out from that noise? But then also, how are you going to educate the consumer that what you need now for your new vehicle, this brand that maybe you weren't considering, we offer that now. So that's where a lot of our messages and strategies are focused on.
What's their
Brian, you
confidence level
mentioned
on actually producing those 63 vehicles?
Yeah, well, you're seeing some big bets, right? You're seeing some brands say, "Hey, we're going to take away resources from part of our lineup because we've got to hit big on, for example, with truck. They know how critical truck is, and so you're seeing some shifts there. And then you're seeing other brands saying, "Look, we're going to take some of these components out of maybe a sedan that needs more. We want those chips to be allocated to our trucks and SUVs where there's higher profit and higher demand." And we're going to move away. So even as consumer demand has shifted, and we've seen the changes that happen with in the sedan category, that's going to continue to I think influence where the OEMs go. But yeah, they're placing their pieces on the big ones. But even like the third row SUVs that are coming out, certainly getting a lot more time and attention and resources at the OEMs than maybe just a simple model refresh of something that has lower demand, lower sell-through.
Brian, you mentioned earlier how much you initially loved driving a minivan, and then you transitioned over into the Ram truck. I'm just curious, what did Ram do? It sounded like they did something specific.
I think you're reading in that a little bit. So I don't own a Ram truck. I actually own an F-150. And my F-150 was sort of my.
Oh, okay.
It's funny. We talk quite a bit about just consumer needs and how they change, or why someone's going to buy. For me, I live out in the suburbs. I'm not pulling a boat or a trailer or any type of anything for my trade. It's just a matter of I wanted that truck. So that I bought with a different need than maybe a pragmatic truck buyer that's saying, "Hey, I need this capability of towing or hauling." So, but a life-change event is one of the biggest indicators of somebody coming into the market that was unexpected to come into the market. And I think that that's really critical when we talk about our audience and how relevant it is to have a fresh audience, not, "Hey, this is modeled off of somebody that bought 5 years ago. Let's go look for someone like that." That's a small piece of the segment. We're talking about life stage, and this, when they come into a marketplace, it might be the first time that anyone's even seen them or been able to target to that customer. It might be the first time that customer was even paying attention to what some of these brands are doing. So we spend a lot of our time and energy with consulting on how critical that fresh, relevant audience is and what their needs are and how to reach and get through to them, as opposed to, "Hey, someone bought 5 years ago, they're going to buy again. Let's just keep hitting the same people." So that also, I think, plays into loyalty as well.
It's funny you say that, and as you were talking about, the manufacturers and the concentration on warranties and incentive programs and things of that nature, the one thing that rarely comes up is like the actual product itself. And your story, moving into a pickup truck, I had a similar one back when we moved out to the countryside and ended up going from an SUV to a pickup. In fact, I was in a BMW X5 and went over to the Ford F-150. And it was sacrilegious because my family, being in the car business, has always sold, Toyota has been our big bread and butter. And so, of course, I went for Toyota first. Like, the Tundra was supposed to be the way to go. But then 2015, that new F-150 was just leaps and bounds better. And Toyota still hasn't done anything, in my opinion, to fix that Tundra to catch up to what the domestics are doing with their pickup trucks. So,
I think it comes out this year or next year.
Good, can't wait.
All new overhaul as far as I know. So yeah, I got into my first truck February of this year.
Just and Jeff is
tired of not having a bed, just not having the room, and got myself into a Tacoma. And it's nice to know if I do want to step up, I can go into the Tundra, and of course with that being new, but not to just focus on trucks. And living where I live out in the Western Maryland area, it's a lot of, I would say farmers, but there's a lot of farming out here. There's a lot of hunters and all that good stuff. And people stick with their trucks, but even more so, it wasn't too long ago. I was at a, I'll spare the comments. I was somewhere, and there was a lot of everyone was a truck driver, but it was either Chevy or Ford. I think out of maybe 200 or 300 trucks, I had the only Toyota, and there was maybe a handful of Ram. But I also know is once someone, I mean, you've got that Ford buyer, and then you've got that Chevy buyer when it comes down to the loyalty with the trucks. And at least in my area, very rare. I mean, if someone owns a Ford truck, they're shitting on the Chevy. And if someone owns a Chevy truck, they're busting on the Ford, you know. Um, Whereas I think they're all pretty freaking nice. I mean, especially the new GMC GMC Chevy that just came out. But I don't know.
Yeah.
You got me going down the truck path and just thinking about loyalty. And I know, for us being a car dealership, for me being a car dealership, the whole loyalty and to get back into the whole CSI, that's a world that we live in. We put a big focus on, getting the feedback from our buyers, um, you know, uh, getting the feedback from the buyers, but also making sure that that we're getting the high scores because we know the OEM's going to grade us on that. And for the most part here at this dealership, I mean, we crush our CSI, we crush our online reputation, but I still find there's no matter what, there's still going to be a problem with loyalty. Um, and
And I
again,
don't
with
know if I-
Do you
Mercedes,
think that lives with the dealer though? Like when I think about if and when I buy my next truck, is it on the OEM or is it on the dealer to keep me within the brand? I think that's the interesting conversation, and there's an interesting balance between how coordinated are the efforts to keep somebody engaged. Like I'm a firm believer that the tier one message is why buy. Why should you care about the new F-150 Lightning all electric vehicle? Why should I care about it as an F-150 owner? The tier two message is like, this is why you should buy now. This is why it's a good time to buy now. And I think that tier three message is always, here's why you should buy from us. This is why you should buy from our store. And I do think that dealership plays such a critical role in keeping someone into the brand, but it can't be without any coordination from tier one with that message, the constant, this is why either Ford's lineup of trucks is still top notch, or this is why you should look at what Ram's offering or what the GMC has to come out. So I would love to hear that dialogue, because I know personally I've had really good experiences from the dealership that I purchased from and serviced from. So I'm much more likely. Whereas if every time I went there it was a long wait or some headaches with things, I would be much more open to looking elsewhere. So I do think the dealer plays a big role.
well, and that's what I was bouncing around in my head as I was explaining that. For us, it's service. It really is. I mean, we're in a unique position because we're we're the only high line dealership within, I'd say, a good hour radius. We've got an Audi dealership about 30 minutes, but it's a smaller dealership. There's also a Lincoln. I'm not sure if that really. I guess they sort of play in our world, but not really.
They're coming back strong.
But what I found, yeah, they are. They got some nice stuff. But what I found on the dealership level has been our service department. Our service, I mean, again, if you look at our CSI scores for service, you look at our online reputation, our customer reviews, we purposely go after service reviews, have been for years. We offer pickup and delivery, even if it's just, we're Ben. So it's typically, a minimum service here is once a year, and, we're in the 300, 250 plus area. And that's probably on the bottom. But the customers love the benefits that we give with service, and they love just the attitude of our people. Yeah, because it's not cheap. It's not cheap to get a Benz service. But when you read our reviews, and I've only said that to dealerships because especially when it comes down to marketing around, what are your customers saying? It's like jump on your dealership reviews, jump on your online reviews. A lot of times your customer, if you read those reviews, your customer will tell you exactly why they love your dealership or why they keep on coming back. There's a pot of gold, whether it's your dealer rater reviews or your Google reviews. If you really take some time and go through and read all those reviews, you can come up with a much, like you said, why buy from this dealership? You can come up with a much better why buy message than, we're family owned and operated. We've got the lowest prices in town, all that, lame stuff that most dealerships continue to use. Pull those reviews up and read through them. There's just a ton of information. The customer's going to tell you exactly what you could be using in your why buy, your loyalty marketing message.
Hey, Jeff, I don't mean to put you on the spot here since I'm going to ask you a question that you might not be prepared for.
Mr. Strum, why don't you go ahead and put me on the spot?
Over. I can't help myself. So it sounds like you're already engaged in a lot of loyalty building activities, right? So when we say loyalty is an activity, not a feeling, right? It sounds like you're doing a lot of that. You know your CSI scores, you know what your online rep looks like, you know how many reviews you have for sales and service. You're doing all those awesome things. Are you aware of any kind of idea what your loyalty rate is for your dealership?
I do. I was just looking at it. We're in the 60s.
Nice.
Right around 65, just under 70%. Yeah, nice. and we don't do a lot of leasing. Right. Unfortunately, you would think that we would. We got a lot of cash buyers in this area, a lot of old money. So our lease penetration is mid to low 30s.
That makes me want to cry. You can do one-pay leases,
and we do, especially on convertibles and such. We'll do one-pay leases, but I mean, typically our highest, year to year would be maybe 34 to 35 with leasing. That's it. And that's why whenever you pulled those numbers up earlier and it was 44 and a half, I thought that was pretty low. It's like, why? Because leasing's always been a great way to keep that customer loyalty, not just with the manufacturer, but with the dealership as well.
Well, you got to have a great lease turn-in process to have a good lease retention. And I'll give something away. This is a really strong tidbit of information. So this came from a call center that we work with, and they discovered that if you wait beyond 18 months after the customer has leased the car to start calling them and talking to them about their next vehicle, you've waited too long. And most companies,
on a 3-year lease,
any lease, it's 18 months. Doesn't matter the term. And in most companies, equity mining solutions, all those things, they wait till there's like 6 months left on the lease. You're a year late by that point.
Yeah. Well, even the manufacturers wait that long.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that there are best practices in what I think other OEMs could be doing to really keep that loyalty in play. And some of it is sort of that evergreen or constant, like always on content, right? Something that I noticed, like Subaru does a really good job of this, where they're front and center on their own manufacturer website of giving comparisons to other competing vehicles, right? So we, regardless of if it's been 18 months, if it's been 3 years, if it's been 6 years, they want to put that content out there because they know you're likely going to be looking, well, maybe something new came along in the crossover segment. So I like that they sort of put it front and center and say, this is how we compare. This is how the new Forester compares to its competition. A lot of OEMs don't want to do that. They don't want to draw attention to their competition. But I think by taking that proactive stance of like, hey, we know our customers, we know what you're likely interested in, and here's what we're going to do. We're just going to present content that compares our Forester to these other vehicles, and then you can choose for yourself. I think doing something like that actually has a lot of confidence and encourages the consumers to say, wow, if they're this front and center with how they're offering up their product lineup, I want to stay with them. They're acknowledging the competition, and they're saying this is why this choice is better, or this is what you should be looking at when you're doing a full comparison. So I think that's a great example of an OEM taking a different approach that could really work, both in content and then obviously keeping people in the brand.
Well, and there's no
data
denying,
to back this
Subaru's
up.
got great customer loyalty.
They rank highest, I believe, in the most recent report.
Yeah. So do you think it's because of that? Because they get out front and center, they're a little bit more transparent, and is that the manufacturer's job, or is that something a dealership can do, or do you think a dealership would be wasting time, money, and resources focusing on that?
Again, I think that it should be a couple things. One, it should be coordinated. There should be a coordinated strategy across the majority of the tactics that you're doing in advertising. In this scenario of automotive, where you've got that tier one, in some cases a tier two, and obviously the tier three franchise model, you've got to have coordination there. It doesn't mean that somebody owns a piece, but a coordinated effort. So to say, hey, for the Forester, this is how we're going to present the content, and this is the lifestyle we're going to show that you have if you own it. But we're also going to put content out there that says we know our customers, we know what else they're looking at, and we're going to be up front and center with it. That should translate to the dealership, where the messaging is, why buy from us? Why buy from Miller Subaru? But then knowing that, taking that data and knowing every single customer that comes on the lot, they've likely looked at these two or three other vehicles, and to speak to them is to speak to them with intelligence. And I think that gives people confidence to know, wow, this dealership really knows me when I'm coming in. They know what my needs are before I even had to tell them, and they know what's important to me and what stands out about this vehicle. I think that's big, and not to continue on the I'm a big fan of Subaru, but I am, and something that happens at the top is that anytime we go meet with them, the question they ask us every meeting, what don't we know? What should we be thinking about that we're not talking about right now? And I think that curiosity always leads to, do we have some gaps here? Are there some holes that we need to cover? And having that thought process at the top, I think, is incredibly helpful in keeping the dealerships engaged, being engaged with what consumers are doing, and that helps with loyalty.
There is some data out there that backs this up. Some interesting stuff. Obviously, always is. But this one came across my desk recently. It's another startup in Vermont, and they are buying a whole bunch of cell phone data, and they're looking at physical movement of cell phones that touched dealerships. So, and they're watching how these devices move from one store to another. And doing a lot of comparisons and like, what is that shopper doing? And then breaking that data down into, are they cross-shopping? Are they shopping within the same brand? And I got to look at one on the Dallas marketplace recently, or a study on the Dallas marketplace, and it was very interesting. Because I come from a dealership, and I was bred to believe that customers are going to sell you short for $5 to your nearest competitor of the same brand, and it's just been instilled in me. And I still believe that, or felt that way until I saw this. And the study completely disproved it. It wasn't that the shopper was going to one dealership or the other within the same brand. They're cross shopping all different brands in a big way. I was shocked how much it was, at least in the Dallas marketplace.
Yeah. Well, and that's why loyalty is tricky. There's just so many different moving parts to it, some of which you have control over, some of it which flags up to your OEM, and some of it is just like human nature. And especially with the car buying process, when we're only buying a car or leasing a car every 3 to 5 years, right? That's not a whole lot of transactional experiences. And a lot of service intervals now are just like twice a year, like Jeff's talking about once a year. So you're not getting necessarily those repeat transactional experiences. So that's the half of it. The other half is your marketing and your communications that can really drive loyalty within those customers, because you're not going to see them all the time. When we think about brands that have like that do loyalty well, whether that's an Apple or a Starbucks or, you know, whatever, Amazon, whatever name you want to throw in there, it's not that they're just you're buying stuff from them all the time, but they're delivering on an experience, and they're really building the shield around you, which is what's really interesting, that helps fend off the competition. So when you come into market for a vehicle, yeah, you might want to shop around, but if you as the dealership have been like staying in contact, like we're talking about, not waiting until 3 to 6 months before a lease is due, you have lovable marketing, you're connected with that customer, even though they might want to shop around, you're still going to have that connection with them. Automotive groups have a super big advantage over single rooftop dealers from that standpoint, just being able to offer that choice within that family. So there's really just a ton of things you can do, and that's really what we're focusing on. You know, when from the Dealer Inspire standpoint, when we look at like our connected marketing strategies and how we can help our dealers do better, especially in this era of low inventory that doesn't sound like it's going to get any better anytime soon. Let's make sure we're strengthening those bonds with our customers and increasing that loyalty rate, doing everything we can do that way.
So, Jason, you mentioned Apple, and of course, I think one of the biggest reasons why they have such great loyalty is based on technology, because you get wrapped up into their ecosystem, and you know it's a pain in the ass to get out of it somewhere else. Obviously, there's a lack of competition. I guess really anymore, you've only got 2 different platforms. And one thing I've always really liked, but so many dealerships fail at it for whatever reason, is how do you get that customer into, especially if you're a group, how do you get the customer into your ecosystem? What can you use from a technology base? I always love customer loyalty programs, whether it was like, you know, you got the card, if you come in, you get certain things, you get points. Back in the day, it was difficult to manage, and you'd see a dealership where a group would sign up with some loyalty program out there, and you know, 3 years later or much less than, you know, they're no longer part of the program. They're not taking advantage of it. Customers forget about it. You know, they've got 20 punches on their gas card, but you know, the dealership's already dropped the service or whatever. Is there anything new out there? Is there anything maybe from a technology standpoint that, because I'm thinking about like, I'm surprised maybe cars or manufacturers haven't figured out how to leverage technology within the car, and maybe we're finally getting down that route. But then you've got all manufacturers plugging into CarPlay or Android. And I wonder if there's a missed opportunity there to maybe build upon customer loyalty, because if you build that ecosystem around the customer based on technology in the car and the manufacturer, I'm just wondering if there's something there that the manufacturers could be missing out on. And then, as you said, Brian, like how do you tie that to the dealership level as well? Just something popped in my head. Because again, I love those customer loyalty programs, but dealerships just fail at them all the time.
Well, it's like any other tool. It's like when it comes to loyalty, and when you talk about technology and getting people locked into your ecosystem, I really think, Jeff, you probably have all the tools you already need. There's not like this off-the-shelf solution you're going to buy that's going to improve your loyalty. And it really comes down to taking what you have and putting that process around that. The follow-up question I wanted to ask you before we got sidetracked, when you talked about your loyalty rate, and you're like, oh, yeah, probably in the 60%, which is awesome. Would you think that your loyalty rate would be that high if you weren't doing all those activities that you were doing in terms of your online rep and getting the reviews and all the services you were offering? Would your loyalty rate be as high as it is if you weren't doing that?
No, it wouldn't be. I mean, how could it be? You know, if
Exactly.
If we are a shitty dealership, people aren't going to come back. Now, you know, our loyalty rate's not going to be good.
Right. So
With
you're
that
using
being
the tools
said,
that you have to prove your loyalty.
with that being
How
said,
do we
always got to
take that
remember
down to
that our
road?
dealership sort of has a small advantage point around that. But you know, it still wouldn't matter. It's, you know, people come back because they enjoy purchasing their car from us, and they enjoy even more having it serviced here.
Yeah.
I think service is such a critical play. I'll say it again, but I do think that there could be efforts made with technology, and maybe it's getting everybody, again, a coordinated effort. So if I'm Ford and I've built out the Ford Pass platform, I can touch on my touch screen within my dash. I can touch it and pull up Ford Pass. That would be a great place to remind me that I'm either due for service, or in some cases that maybe even the equity in my vehicle might be really worthwhile for the local dealer there. I think that's just where it gets tough though. You've got OEM technology, and then how does that translate down to their dealer franchise level? That's a lot for them to work out. And really, to Jason's point, I think that leveraging what you have in front of you could be the most efficient use of your time at the dealership level, because I think ultimately the audience is focused on, for my dealership, how do I keep more customers coming to my dealership? And I think without a doubt, it's the service lane and the process and expectations that you meet there. It's using the technology and reputation to make sure that you're staying in front of consumers and reminding them that this is a good place to do business and continue to do service with. So a lot of that tech does exist. We'll see how the OEMs can sort of transition from live in the vehicle to the dealer level. I think that's an exciting area.
Well, we've got, so just thinking about communication wise, do you guys see anything maybe on the horizon, or are there any proven best practices that dealerships are leveraging to help influence a higher loyalty rate? I mean, we've got a lot of dealerships will reach out via email, you know, so we've got that technology platform, if that's what you want to call it. You know, snail mail is probably, I mean, I don't see a lot of dealerships really incorporating that from a loyalty communication, unless it is maybe a lease turn in. Is there anything else out there that again, you know, you guys have worked with some larger groups and a lot of dealerships. Anyone out there that's like, you've seen something, you're like, wow, that makes a lot of sense?
Yes. And Jeff, it's email. Now, I know that sounds crazy, and I know that sounds old, but in this case, it can work really well. And when I say email, I mean, Jeff, you remember this. You and I go all the way back like a decade almost. And I remember back like in our Twitter days or on the early Dealer Refresh days where, you know, I remember seeing you at Driving Sales Executive Summit talking about email. It's like email marketing used to be the super hot and heavy topic that we'd all talk about. How do we become better email marketers? And I know the technology feels old, but I don't really see anyone ever asking about how we can be better email marketers. And when it comes to loyalty marketing, email is like your easiest entry point into like increasing that loyalty rate, and not from the blast perspective, right? We're not talking the traditional email blast that we've all been looking to get away from since 2010, but like even doing something as simple as drip campaigns that are tied to when the person buys the car and they go into effect once they buy the car, and those emails are tailored to that experience and tailored around service and certain milestones and certain service milestones. That's how you keep that connection. So to Alex's point earlier, through that study, I think it was through Quorum is the name of the company that you're referring to. You know, it's like, hey, if you email about a lease after 18 months, you're too late. If you're doing drip campaigns right from the start, once that vehicle's marked sold, then you're in constant communication with them. So, you know, at 2 days, right? 2 days, a letter from an email from the owner or the GM goes out thanking them for the email or thanking them for the purchase. You know, maybe at 7 days, that's when that request for the review goes out. 30 days after the sale, you intro the service department, give them a coupon, show them how easy it is to schedule service when they're ready. You know, then the next few emails are tailored around like 7,500 mile service at 6 months and the 15,000 mile service at 12 months. At 22 months, you're talking about tires. At 24 months, you're talking about, whatever it is. At 36 months, you're talking about a trade-in if it's a finance. So you're building these out up front, which is a little bit of a heavy load, not going to lie. But at the same time, these are going into effect. They're timed once they get flipped as sold into the CRM, and then they're just firing off. You revisit them to like pull any little weeds, update any little content as needed, but then they're just running. And now you're not relying on blasts every single time. You're not relying on the spray and pray. You actually have some intelligent and, dare I say, lovable email marketing that's happening. And then you can save your text-based communications for those more urgent, in the moments kind of messages that you want to get out. It's a little bit harder to do longer form text campaigns, just because people, as we all know, are a little bit picky. But when we get texted, it's one thing when you're like building that relationship or in the car buying process with somebody, text is really handy. Same thing when your vehicle's in for service, communicating that way, text is really handy. But for these longer term relationship things, I mean, drip email campaigns is just an easy win. And you don't need anything new and shiny. You just need to make sure that you're coding them responsively. You're thinking about the mobile experience. You're keeping them short and sweet and getting that information across.
I got your back on email, Jason.
Well,
so right now I agree with you, and I think maybe
now.
I think we've got maybe a few more years where what you're saying holds true. But as this younger generation, I mean, I think about my son. He is just a few months over 18. He doesn't check his email.
Well,
that younger generation does not communicate via email at all.
Jeff, I mean, as you age and get into the
workforce,
workforce,
get a job,
there
and all
are
that good
tools
stuff,
that become part of your practice. I got a newspaper right
I get
there.
that. Yeah, you also just got you a subscription of Auto News, but I still, I don't know. I'm just wondering what's going to be in the pipeline, because I think email will, and I used to never think that, but now that I've got a son and I see his level of communication, my daughter's level of communication, even once they get a job, because I think a lot of those jobs, and think about it, a lot of them don't even use email. I mean, they're using Slack or some other type of communication channel. So I'm just wondering what's on the horizon for technology-wise around it, because I don't think email is really going to be.
Yeah. There's one thing I think Jason's hitting on, and this is why I've got his back, and it also goes to what Ryan Everson's asking about iOS 15 changes. So many of the communication channels have been used for marketing purposes, and they've been a bit abused. So even texting, you gotta, if you want to do any kind of marketing texting, you have to go into a short code or, that kind of stuff to do these things. So anyway, when you are being one-to-one and providing relevant information to somebody, then you will get through. And that's the real key, is we as marketers need to figure out what's relevant to that consumer. So the more data intelligence we have, blah, 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 the better we can craft the message to, land in their inbox, land on their phone, wherever it may be. So.
Yeah, I do think there's something there about to privacy. And so if someone has opted in and they're receiving your email, that's a completely different scenario. And even to your point, Alex, about what is the content of that message, even considering the platform, really realizing where people are opening up their emails, but you're reaching them because they've opted in at some point to receive information from you. I do think that the idea of privacy really does pose one of the largest challenges, not just for dealers, but OEMs and all advertisers across every industry, is what do we do with privacy regulation changing, with just hardware companies changing their own regulation and how they define privacy. It gets back to some of the basics of being contextually relevant, like really understanding when and where someone would be shopping and having a message there, as opposed to the guessing game that goes on, or hoping that we're reaching somebody. So there's a lot, I think, that goes into how we can use different platforms to stay in front of the consumer. But yeah, I'm all for email, and I'm even more of a bigger fan of having the right context within that email and that voice. It's not just, we've seen these terrible emails, right, where it's the crazy font that gets sent out to us, and it looks like no one's cared about the canned response in 5 years. I think there's an approach here, as with all, that an email should be considered part of your advertising program, and it should be on brand with everything else you're putting out there.
Yeah, I still get car dealer emails today written all in Comic Sans purple font. So there's definitely some room for improvement.
I think we'll continue to see technology evolve, especially within the connected car. I know Mercedes-Benz is probably maybe at the forefront of that, being able to communicate with the customer through the car from the dealership and keeping them updated where they are with their services. I think there's going to be a larger tie, and I'll have to agree to disagree with you guys on the email stuff.
Well, Jeff, I was just going to say, because you brought up your kids, and I'll bring up mine. So I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old who are both in school, and they both, the first thing they were given when they were issued their Chromebooks was their school district email address that they're checking every day. So it's not necessarily as foreign as maybe we think it is, but I totally get where you're coming from. When we think about even how the phone calls change, the latest stat I saw on phone calls is like 94% of people won't answer the phone if they don't know who's calling them. We just won't answer their phone, right? So that's why we shifted our into this text-first mindset for outreach. But at the same time, when we're talking long-term life cycle follow-up today, right now, the best way to do that is with intelligent, smart emails that almost predict the needs of the customer, where they're at in their ownership or service cycle.
Right. So send the email, make sure your phone number that you're going to call them on is in that email. And a lot of the phones will tell you, maybe this is, Jeff Kirshner at Mercedes-Benz of Hagerstown, and they might answer it.
I was really hoping. I mean, we had, and Jason, I know you remember this because I think we had a whole discussion about it at Driving Sales one time with Eric sitting around a round table and did a quick podcast around. We were talking around mobile and talking around mobile apps and dealerships, and there was this huge wave of dealerships getting on board with a dealership having their own mobile app, and it just sort of fell flat on its face. I don't know. Was it before its time? I love the whole concept. I worked with Ben over at Automotion, and all of my dealerships had a mobile app, and we were using the messaging communication piece within that pretty effectively. And I think maybe it lasted 2 or 3 years where everyone was headstrong around having a mobile app for the dealership. And then, of course, that was going to go away because dynamic mobile sites were going to be the next wave, and that never happened. I don't know. I think.
But yes, apps. I mean, I remember.
Maybe we'll see another. Maybe we'll see another swing of the pendulum around that here in the future. But no, I agree with you. For now, absolutely. I mean, email is definitely still there.
The app story is just right. I just remember being back in the dealership and sitting in all these pitch meetings and like fighting owners and managers not to buy the app. I'm like,
see, I did the opposite. I got in on it, man. I like
Jeff had the app and his QR codes.
That's right.
And they worked great on his BlackBerry.
QR codes.
Jeff was on point with being a front runner for QR codes. It just took us 10 years to get there. But no, your website obviously now covers all those things that an app would. I'm just wondering, I wanted to kind of look and see how many of those companies that tried to sell us apps 8-9 years ago are still in existence. I know they made a lot of money, and who knows if they're even around. But there's.
I would say most of them aren't around. I think Automotion. I think Ben's still around, but he sort of transitioned it over to, I guess, some different services. But I'm still surprised that the manufacturer didn't leverage it. Manufacturers. I mean, I've got an app for my Toyota, to do remote start and all that good stuff, but there's no messaging capability within that from the dealership, as far as I know. I think we're missing out
It all
there.
goes back to what is the value that it serves, right? And do
Yeah.
you keep something updated on your site or on your phone? I mean, most apps get unloaded if they're not used after a certain amount of time, and so that
Yeah, but
usually
if
tells
you've
me
got
how
remote
important
start
it is.
on, so that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Our manufacturers missing out on that sector of technology to get that customer within their ecosystem and have those lines of communication. It's going to happen. I'm sure it will. But I mean, I'm in my Toyota truck app all the time. Again, for remote start, unlock, lock, monitor. How many more things? And as the vehicle, as technology continues to climb and get better within. I mean, heck, before long, we just got in a new S-Class Benz, and it's crazy, all the technology in that vehicle. It's actually overwhelming, and all the different things it can do in the communication. Now I haven't dove into the app and the communications, but I know there is the ability of the dealership to be able to communicate with the customer on a loyalty basis type of messaging through that app. So, what other things can you manufacturer do to get that customer in that ecosystem, love that ecosystem, user friendly, and that alone from the manufacturer standpoint could definitely help improve loyalty. And then, as your focus is, Brian's like, where's the dealership come into that, and how can we have a consistent message between the OEM, the dealership, to the customer?
Yeah. No, something that our team spends a lot of time on, and really going into 22 as a lot of these privacy changes come into place, and reaching consumers just wherever you think you can reach them is going away, and really reaching a consumer that's in market. We're spending a lot of time on content, like really delivering custom content on our platform, and then targeting people that have been on our platform. So, for example, if someone's shopping Mercedes or BMW, we want to have something that's like, hey, this is what it's like to own a BMW or a Mercedes or a Lexus or Audi. These are the experiences that you have. Being introduced to the brand, it might be all about the performance or the luxury feel, etc. But what is that ownership feeling like after I buy? What should I expect? And I think that that's a big area for content to grow through cars.com specifically, because we can kind of take that 20 plus years of editorial of how do we take sort of car shopping advice that we know our audience wants, and how do we translate that in through some filters and lenses of this is what it's like to own a vehicle, and this is us working with the manufacturer and dealers to share that experience. So as I'm shopping and maybe I'm entering into the luxury market or the full-size truck market, I've done a lot of research on editorial about why should I buy this brand, and what benefits does it have with towing or cargo. But then the next step is why should I get really excited about owning it, and what can I expect if I own this vehicle? And part of it is understanding some of the complexities of the technology, or understanding how to use the technology in the vehicle. But then also, like, what else can you do with it? Can I auto start my vehicle from if certainly in the Midwest here, that's something I care about during the wintertime, or in the summertime to cool it down. So I think there's content there that can show what it's like to also own that vehicle, and that can either engage new customers into that brand or keep people loyal to the brand to say, oh, I didn't know that they updated this, or I didn't know that the new model has that capability of what it's like to own it. And I think that that's a big area for us to focus on.
Yeah, and actually, dealers can piggyback off that same kind of level. That's one of the things we're going to be talking about here. As we're running up against 2:00, I got to make sure. Can I self promote really quick? I'm going to self promote really quick.
As long as Brian gets to sell sweaters after you.
He does. So we are next week, September 23rd, and then the week after that, September 28th. We are actually holding a webinar over at Dealer Inspire, how to achieve next level loyalty. Check it out. Get registered, dealerinspire.com/loyalty. Thanks for throwing it up there, Jake. Appreciate that, buddy. Where we're going to be taking a deep dive into these tactics. We're going to have some stuff to give away in terms of collateral that you can plug and play with. but we're going to get into how you can take your use your first party data in your search ads. We're going to talk about how you can create content for your owners to make them better owners and make them love you more. We're going to talk about how you can target your video and your social ads and everything else to drive loyalty. So really expanding on that conversation. I'm just going to read, just like Jake is throwing up a script here for me. That's perfect. Thanks, buddy.
Well, and Jacob, make sure you send all that information over to us so we can get get that advertised or pushed over onto the Dealer Refresh community for those webinars.
That'd be sweet.
Sweet.
Yep, let's keep Jake busy.
I think we do
Jake's
something.
Jake's the second busiest man in the show here, man.
Jake's always on point, man. He's got everything put together, man.
I will say, especially if Alex Fetter's listening, like every time we have a refresh Friday with Cars.com, any of the group
best
on,
format.
Jake absolutely earns another third-day job extension.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
All right.
If anyone wants to get a hold of Jason Stum, how would they go about that? And same with you, Brian.
Be sure you spell it STRUM.
Actually,
you have to create that alias.
You know what's funny? Back in my dealership days, I actually had a version of my email address that was spelled J Strum to forward to my regular email address. Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, you need to go change your birth certificate.
That's what I'm doing next.
From the OEM side, it's bmiller@cars.com. You can email me directly or connect with me on LinkedIn and social media. Happy to talk to you about what's happening at the tier 1 level, tier 2 level, CPO. That's my gig. And I really want to say thank you to Alex and Jeff for having us on today. Enjoyed this convo.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I wish maybe we'll have to have you guys back. I think we could have touched maybe a little bit more on tactics around CPO. You touched on it, but there's probably some missed opportunities around CPO.
It's as inventory is so tight, CPO is going to be huge. It's going to be even bigger in 22 than it was in 21. So.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, let's get you guys back on maybe here in a few months, which we typically always have a standing time with you guys. So I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. So, but until then, man. Have a great weekend.
Well,
and if anyone's looking for a crazy Christmas sweater, what's the URL, Brian?
uglychristmassweaterparty.com.
Awesome.
Well, there's one more thing. So we probably will be talking a bit more about Cars.com next week with Ryan Everson. So he's been throwing out some hellacious comments today. And Ryan's bringing some friends along, so it'll be an interesting Friday for sure.
Yeah, it'll be another great show for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to it.
All right, gentlemen.
Thanks, fellas. It's great talking to you.
Enjoy your weekend.
Yep, make it a great